Hi everybody, welcome to Breeders Cup Focus. I'm Dan Illman along with Mike Beer. In this edition of Breeders Cup Focus, we're going to take a look at the top contenders for the Breeders Cup Sprint. The pre-entries are out for the Breeders Cup Sprint, and we'll take a look at the top contenders as ranked by Daily Racing Form handicapper Brad Free's pre-entry morning line. And the morning line favorite is the undefeated two-year-old from the West Coast, trained by Bob Baffert. That's Game Winner at 5-2, and from the East Coast, it's Complexity, Chad Brown, 7-2. So we have a really nice matchup of East and West, two top trainers, two undefeated colts, and I think they're the horses to beat.
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, they're two horses who have just run really well. They've combined to go 5 for 5 so far, and they've both run really well, and they've both run fast figures so far as they make their way to the Breeders' Cup next Saturday and a couple Saturdays. I mean, this horse, Game Winner, he's done absolutely nothing wrong. I guess the advantage he has is he's already stretched out around 2 turns.
The co-third choices in the morning line made by Brad, Gunmetal Gray, Code of Honor. They've been beaten by Game Winner and Complexity, respectively. And we're going to go back to Game Winner's American Pharaoh. His first start around 2 turns at the juvenile distance of 1 1/16. He showed good speed from the start. He's taking over the lead in those pink silks. Gunmetal Gray's getting going a little bit too late. You're not catching Game Winner when you spot on this kind of advantage over this kind of racetrack.
Yeah, I think those things are certainly true. And Game Winner ran a very nice race. I like the way that he finished in the last 1/8 of a mile. Gunmetal Gray did race on at the end of the race. It was interesting. They kept him, close to the pace in there, as close as they could. Gunmetal Gray got outpaced a little bit around that second turn, but he was still racing on at the end.
Did you see anything in that race, though, that makes you believe that Gunmetal Gray can turn the tables on Game Winner?
Well, I don't know about that. We'll see. He's certainly going to have to improve, and maybe Game Winner will, wind up with a little bit of a different trip this time in the Breeders' Cup. I mean, he did have a really nice trip in the American Pharaoh, just sitting right up on the pace. This race could be run totally different. There's a lot of other speed in this race. He may not get that same kind of trip. That could certainly make things a lot closer between these two horses.
While Game Winner has shown versatility, winning from off the pace, winning from pace pressing mode, Complexity is one of the speeds that you've mentioned. He has never been headed in 2 lifetime starts, including this gate-to-wire performance in the Champagne, where the Chad Brown trainee took no prisoners. He's in the stretch now with a clear lead. You're going to see Code of Honor rallying in those green silks. He's going to poke his head into second right now. How did you like the way either one of these horses finished? Code of Honor being trained by Shug McGahee. Shug usually trains these long-winded types. This horse may not have that kind of pedigree, but this was a good performance for a Shug-trained second-time starter.
I thought Code of Honor ran well in this race, especially when you consider he stumbled very badly at the start of this race. So as opposed to his debut going 6 furlongs at Saratoga, where he showed speed and got to the front, he was basically last up the backstretch in the Champagne. He made a nice run around the turn. He stayed on through the stretch. I liked the way that he sort of cut into that margin. He was never beating Complexity on there, but he cut into the margin at the end of that race. And so actually making up ground on that horse, I'll give him a little extra credit for that.
Neither one of those horses, having run at Belmont and Saratoga, have a 2-turn race. To you, how much more important is it to have that 2-turn experience under your belt? Game Winner obviously has it.
Yeah, I don't know how much more important it is, but it's certainly helpful that you already know the horse can do it. Personally, it's not something that I would worry about too much if they haven't gone around 2 turns yet, but it could certainly work against them in some way. Complexity, the thing that he has going for him, he's just so fast. I mean, he's got such natural, easy speed. I'm not totally convinced that he's going to want to eventually go long, but I think I want to say he'll be fine with the 1 1/16 that Breeders' Cup Day. I guess we'll find out. He's a very talented horse.
Let's talk about a 2-turn prep race down at Keeneland, and it was won in shocking fashion. A 70-1 gate-to-wire gambit from K-Nix Go. Let's watch this race, and he just went right to the front, and he just kept right on going. And if you pick apart his past performances, Mike, this horse should not have been 70-1 in this race. Standard Deviation, who drew a terrible post position, post 13, and only his second lifetime start, he's going to finish 3rd in here. I thought, all things considered, he ran okay.
Yeah, I liked the effort from Standard Deviation in this race. He had a really tough trip the way that the race set up for him, and that I don't want to take anything away from the winner there. He was a huge price in that race. As you say, he was maybe a little dirtied up headed into that race. I don't think he should have a 70-1. He should have been a long shot in there, though. But he really handled the stretch out. He's a really fast horse early, and it's not like he was stopping in the stretch of that race.
Let's talk about Signal Man, who split those two horses, first time Lasix in the Breeders' Futurity, and I thought it was a good performance for him. He is slowly moving forward with each and every start. Right now, the horses coming out of the Breeders' Futurity, let's be honest, they're nice. They have a lot of potential, but they are slow compared to Game Winner and Complexity.
Yeah, they might just wind up being in the wrong year because there are horses from the East and the West who are actually really good 2-year-olds this year.
Mind Control's a Grade 1 stakes winner already. Yeah. He won the Hopeful going 7 furlongs. He had a lot of things go his way that day. One of the speeds didn't break, and that left Mind Control out there on the lead, and it was a contested pace, but it wasn't like they were going fast at all, and he took advantage, holding on to win by 3/4 of a length over the now sideline Mucho. He was going to run in the Breeders' Futurity. Came down with a little bit of an illness. So there are a lot of things working against Mind Control. He hasn't run in what, 2 months? Yeah. This is going to be his first start around 2 turns, but he does have the speed to play a factor in this race, especially if Complexity wants to go. And now all of a sudden, these closers look a little bit more interesting.
And he's a good horse too. He's a really talented horse. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. It's unfortunate for his connections that he did have to skip the Breeders' Futurity, because the way that things played out in there, and listen, maybe he never would have caught Canucks anyway.
Trip would have worked.
But he might have gotten a good trip in the race, and he might actually have 2 Grade 1s heading into the Breeders' Cup. So we'll see what happens to them. Obviously, you don't like to see them missing their major prep race leading into Breeders' Cup day, but this is a talented 2-year-old.
Well-Defined ticks a lot of boxes, and folks, I know a lot of you at home may not have ever heard of Well-Defined. This is a Florida bred. He's been down at Gulfstream all summer, all fall. He's won around 2 turns. Yeah. He's run a fast race, a 91 Beyer speed figure. He's got a very good trainer, an underrated one, and Kathleen O'Connell winning at almost 20% this year. He's yet to face this kind of caliber.
Right. And he's another speed in a race that feels like it's all we have is a bunch of speed in this race, so that could work against him too. He has run really well in his last 2 starts, though. On figures, he's very competitive with this group of horses. We'll see what happens. These Florida 2-year-olds, like we talked about this before, it seems like we have one every year that sort of runs the table in those 2-year-old races down there, and then they're not quite up for it on Breeders' Cup day, but this horse has done nothing wrong.
Baffert versus Brown, West versus East, Game Winner versus Complexity. They're the 2 favorites with the pre-entries out in the Breeders' Cup Sprint.